All right, guys, what's going on? John and Brooke here. So what I wanted to do was something a little bit different for the holidays. I wanted to talk about coming into the holiday season and dealing with anxiety and depression and the fear and the overwhelmingness of what the holidays sometimes can bring. And I have the awesome, fortunate experience of dealing with Brooke, who has a lot of experience in dealing with these kind of issues, PTSD and anxiety, depression, all that kind of stuff. So, Brooke, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do for a living and how you got into it?
Okay, yeah. Well, I am a licensed clinical social worker, and I've been in the mental health field since 2003, actually, pretty much providing therapy to adults. I work at the VA hospital, and I love my job. And I also have a private practice at Growth and Recovery Counseling Center here in Tampa, Trinity area, where I got my shirt, my mental health awareness shirt. But I've been a provider there since 2014. It's just a little side practice I do, but it gives me an opportunity to really do what I love in a different way that I can't really do at the VA. So it's really been a blessing to me having this career and this job. And I think it's a worthwhile discussion for us to have around the holidays, is how to kind of take care of yourself and avoid those holiday blues, right? So, so anyway, you know, I think John and I want to be able to contribute in a meaningful way with this channel. And this is one of the ways we thought about that would be really easy, but yet impacting, right?
Yeah.
So
I think when I was going through life, I went through a stage of serious depression, and I always looked at depression as just a form of weakness. It was what I was going through I couldn't come out of because I wasn't strong enough, and I would beat myself up out of it. And coming into the holiday season, dealing with people that have serious issues, had a family member loss, or lost their job, or going into something that is just so overpowering, and you don't know how to control that feeling or that emotion, the emotion. So what I wanted to talk about is what you would suggest for someone that is going through a serious issue during the holidays.
having a hard time in the holidays.
Having a hard time.
Well, I think there's a number of things, and you know what I'm going to bring up is just a few. But I think at this time of year, particularly lonely people can feel so much more alone. You know, all of the media, you know, centering around families and happiness and blah, blah, blah. It can be very hard for people that have, like John said, lost a loved one, or is dealing with a divorce, or any major life change, a job loss. I mean, you don't have to look far in our world to find that we are in a chaotic, stressful environment on any day,
right? Especially
let alone
right now.
That's right.
Yep.
Especially right now, and then you add in the stress of the holidays. So really, that first point is to recognize that holiday stress is normal. It's expected in many ways.
Yeah.
You know, there's unrealistic expectations that people have. Oh, you got to buy this Christmas gift and this, and you have to make all this money and have this wonderful Christmas dinner with family. When we all know that every family has its problems, right? And every family has its drama, and really just kind of recognizing that we're all in this. We all have some stress around the holidays.
I think we all forget that. I think when we're going through that kind of emotion and that feeling, we forget that we're not the only ones going through this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's the power of it, is recognizing that holidays bring out strong emotion, right? So it's going to feel harder at times. My job is the busiest around this time of year.
Yeah.
You know, like John's is the slowest,
Yeah.
and mine is the busiest.
Right.
Unfortunately so,
Right.
because of the stress that the holidays add. So that's really the first one, is just kind of normalizing it. And then the next one is doing something to add meaning and purpose during the holidays. When, you know, when some of it, particularly when there's so much stress going on, right? And some of it seems so meaningless. fights and family discord and spending money and shopping and all that, but adding meaning, purposefully, intentionally adding meaning and being mindful about that. These are things as simple as using your time and your talents to volunteer. There's so many ways you can do it, whether it's with your church or at a local school. If you're an artist, you can donate some artwork, or like John, he works with his hands. He can, people like him can volunteer with Metropolitan Ministries and help repair people's homes. I mean, there's a million ways. If you cook, you can cook a meal, or help at homeless shelters, things like that.
I think sometimes it's so important to stay busy, and sometimes staying busy, the one thing that really I had to go through is not staying home. Get out of the house, go for a walk. There's things that you can do for free. There was things that I could do, but I never thought outside my box. To me, this was my comfort spot. So staying home was a sense of security, but I was walloping in my self-pity. I should have been out. I should have been active, doing things too.
Well, and that's one of the ones we'll get to.
Yeah.
But this one particularly is, again, that how do you find significance in your life? How do you improve your mood? Is you add, sources of meaning, right? So purpose and meaning. So that was just one kind of quick way. And that's going to look different for everyone. I think that's where faith comes into play as well.
Yeah. Good point.
I know that God can do all things, right? And being able to use that as a source of strength during this time absolutely adds meaning for people during this hard time.
I think, adding God into it is one of the things that I struggled with, because being involved in the church, I kept hearing everyone say, "Give it to God, give it to God, give it to God," and I feel like you give it to God or you take it back. But you give them a little bit, and you kind of play boundaries with God, right? And to really give something to God, but to still get on with life.
And have some skills. Develop skills of how to deal with real everyday stress, right?
Yeah.
Like you've said before, giving it to God is so abstract. It's like, what does that really mean?
That's
you
right.
needed,
That's right.
like when you were talking with your therapist years ago, I remember you telling me about the clipboard. If you want to share that.
Yeah. So one day, I'll tell you, I was driving on the highway through Hartford, Connecticut, and I was going about 105 miles an hour, and I reached bottom. And
after your divorce, or during your divorce?
Yeah, after the divorce, I reached bottom pretty hard, and I was driving on a highway just looking for an out. I was talking myself out of whipping my car into the woods, and I called my counselor and I said, "Hey, I need help." I've been with my counselor for a little bit of time, and when I would go into my sessions, my counselor would have the clipboard, and I felt like it was me venting all the time and not really getting anything out. So I called them up and I said, "Man, you got to put down the clipboard and teach me techniques on how to breathe and focus and get through what I was doing."
Get out of your head.
Right. So one time my counselor told me, he said, "I got homework for you this week." He said, "I want you to go out and find something that John likes to do." Now, I've always been a worker. I've always been a provider. That was the only thing I knew in my life. And so a week went by, I went back. He said, "What did you do?" I said, I didn't do anything. I don't know what to do. And he said, "Your homework is to go out this week and find something that you like to do." So I went out and I went on a hike. And I'll never forget, I sat down.
What year was that?
2015 maybe? Yeah, 16. But I went on this hike, and I'll never forget, I sat down just in a random spot, and there was this huge, massive oak tree in front of me. And I couldn't believe the size of this tree, because my whole life I never sat and looked at nature. I never looked at anything that was going on. I went from one job to the other. And I'll never forget that day where I found my oak tree. And I try to tell people, when you're going through something, find your oak tree. Find something that can get you to pull you out of, whether it's going on a hike, whether it's swimming, going scuba diving, doing things that challenge you to get you out of your normal life.
Connecting to nature
a wonderful thing.
And having kind of a
you
safe
know?
place to go, yeah.
I didn't realize how important and vital that would be in my life later on.
Yeah, something calming.
Yeah, it's very nice.
Yeah. Well, for sure. And, you know, like we said, that that's another part of it too, which I'll touch on in a second. But maybe a third point about how to avoid the holiday blues is really just simplifying and minimizing stress as much as you can. And instead of jam-packing every day, every weekend with this holiday party and this, you know, event and this, trying to, you know, assess and save some time for yourself. But that also includes setting limits with other people, particularly people who stress you out. Putting some people at arm's reach is actually a healthy thing. I know that's counterintuitive, right, at times, but, and how do you do that? Okay, well, hey, Thanksgiving dinner is going to be stressful. Setting a time limit of how long you'll be there, and certain topics that you avoid just in terms of being, you know, keeping the peace and being more effective, and so your emotions aren't triggered, right, when we have strong emotional topics.
That's a great point. That was one of the things that I had to learn as time went on too, is
Staying away from.
is setting boundaries. There were people in my life that were, we use this word toxic so loosely nowadays, but there were people in my life that were toxic. And it was hard for me to approach someone and say, hey, I don't want you here for the holidays. I need my peace, right? Because that person in my life added so much stress and anxiety in me personally. So,
And saying no, being able to say no to things, or hey, I can't do that right now, but maybe later. Is kind of a tactful way of
It's hard when you have a spouse and you want to see them have that happiness and joy around their family also, but but I think setting time limits or little boundaries is definitely helpful.
it's
helpful.
Fortunately, I think in this phase of life, we don't really have that problem too much now, but perhaps in the past, being able to set limits with family members from our past lives, like we all have. But yeah, just again, simplifying as much as possible and just absorbing the moments versus, you know, busying ourselves so much that we can't keep up with our own schedule. So yeah, and then, you know, one of those we talked about earlier was talking ahead of time, like with people, and compromising, knowing that, okay, I'm going to spend this much time at your mother's house, and then we're going to go over to Uncle Susie's house, and, you know, blah blah blah, and being able to kind of divvy up the time in a compromising way, so that everyone's needs are respected and acknowledged and tried to be met. You know, nothing's perfect, but finding that middle ground. And then the fourth one that I thought about was the easiest one. You already said it, was getting active, putting your shoes on. It's called, clinically speaking, it's called behavioral activation. Getting up and doing something. Pleasant activities are known to increase our mood. And the more time we spend engaged in pleasant activities for ourselves, and that includes self-care, right? Self-care is defined as anything that helps nourish you and replenish your energy, whether it's going to the gym or talking with a healthy friend, spending time with your children, spending time with a pet, going for a walk, whatever that is for you. Yeah, it increases. It's not just staying busy though, because busyness can add to anxiety. It's doing things that increase your it's pleasurable for you. So, and that increases your mood really in the long run. So I like to just say, you know, put your shoes on. Sometimes it's hard for people, particularly if there's depression involved, to get up and out. Like you say, it's so easy to isolate and shut down. But that's the very thing that keeps one trapped in their own kind of ruminative thoughts. So forcing yourself, and again, none of this is easy, particularly when there's, you know, real depression going on. You have to force yourself. It's going to be counterintuitive. So
now let me ask you this: do you feel like, Brooke, that sometimes medication is important?
Well, sure, of
I
course.
mean, if you're going through something and that extreme.
Well, that was the number. That was the fifth.
Oh.
You're
Jumped.
You're reading my mind. The fifth, how to avoid the holiday blues is recognizing when to get support, right? And calling upon therapists, calling upon psychiatrists, mental health providers that prescribe medication. Absolutely. If something is persistent and behavioral techniques aren't really working, right?
Yeah.
You're still really depressed, you have low energy, really sad more times out of the month than not, and it's affecting your functioning to a degree that sometimes talking to a psychiatrist is a very viable step. A lot of people don't like to consider that, but it's the very thing that some people really need, even if it's just in the short term, to help them through a rough patch.
Yeah, great point.
But yes, asking for support, that includes things like reaching out to friends. Unfortunately, suicide is a real thing, and but we have resources and we have assistance. We have 211, which is in all 50 states apparently, and in Puerto Rico, that we can call if there's a crisis. 988 for veterans, it's a veterans crisis line. But really just reaching out, because when we're in a pit of despair, it's hard to see clearly.
Yeah.
And other people can add that necessary perspective. That really saves lives, so. And in doing our part too, when we recognize that people are kind of backing away, balancing, do I reach out to them? Checking in on your friends during these holiday times is a good thing.
Absolutely.
Don't you think?
Yeah. Absolutely. Great job.
Yeah.
Great job.
Well,
Yeah, great job.
I hope this was helpful. I think really the thought was again, how can we provide some use of our time and talents, right? In a way that's meaningful, particularly during this time in our country and our world where things are stressful.
True.
And finding a little peace in the chaos is a good thing. So.
Well, great job, Rick. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. I hope you like this. To all of our subscribers, again, thank you so much for watching this video. During this holiday season, God bless all of you guys, and
maybe we can put the links in to share as well, some of the resources out there that we just mentioned for people that need help.
Very nice.
Just so that you have
know
them.
where to go.
Yeah.
You know where to go. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Wish you all the best.